With us from London, Andreas Krieg, an assistant professor in defence studies at King's College, London. He specialises in armed groups. So what's your take on the Mosul situation right now? We talk a lot about how difficult it's going to be for the army, the Iraqi forces. What's your take?
Hi, Gamal. Yeah, good question. I think operationally, if you look at the military operation, I think it goes a lot better than everybody expected, especially the Iraqi forces making a lot more progress. Have now encircled the ISIS fighters that are still in the town. So operationally, I think we will see probably in the next couple of weeks Mosul to be declared as liberated. The question then is what comes after that. And I think we are completely, the media in general, we're losing touch of what's really important here because we're looking at it operationally as a military operation. And we think that once Mosul is liberated, we're actually seeing we can declare victory, but far from it. Actually, we should look at it more strategically, look at it from a social-political point of view and say what is actually going to come after ISIS and what's going to come once Mosul is liberated. So even if you, let's say there are a few hundred fighters now entrapped in Mosul, and they will continue fighting to death probably. Some of them will try to escape, but generally they will all try to. ISIS as a group is a narrative that will be there to stay, and they will probably try to fight another day.
Right. So this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to come to you with, Andreas. Is what happens to ISIL? They don't. You quote unquote liberate a city. ISIL doesn't just melt away and disappear entirely, does it? I mean, it's been around for a long time, and it's held the city for this long. So clearly, it's strong.
Exactly, and ISIS didn't start in 2014. ISIS started when the Iraqi invasion started in 2003. So really, we have to go back to see the entire evolution of this group. They were called Al-Qaeda in Iraq, then Islamic State in Iraq, then they were called ISIS, Islamic State. And they were able to sustain themselves. The idea lived on. They were able to, there was an evolution of thought. They went from a terrorist group to an insurgency group. Now they're returning to becoming increasingly so a terrorist group that will, have attacks overseas, but also in Iraq. So even when the war stops on, the conventional military operation stops against ISIS in Iraq, there will be continuously a security threat from people who affiliate with the group. So there will be sleeper cells. There will be people who join the group, and there will be these lone wolf attacks all over Iraq, and we've seen that over the last couple of 6 months. But essentially, what this group is like a virus. This idea, this narrative, this social-political narrative is like a virus that infects, that is looking for a host it can infect. So it infected Al-Qaeda it started from Al-Qaeda in Iraq, then went into the insurgency, then went into the insurgency again in 2014, then went to Syria. So this virus will live on, and it will always find a new host.
Sorry to interrupt you. Using that theory, how much to a degree do you think it would have almost, quote-unquote, infected the people of Mosul? They've been under ISIL control for years now, and if I'm not mistaken, when ISIL actually rolled into town back in 2014, they were in some quarters sort of welcomed because people felt, oh, we're getting away from the government here, which hasn't done anything for us.
Exactly. So they were the only, let's say, speaking tube for the Sunni communities in Iraq. So the Kurds are well represented, the Shia are well represented, but what about Sunni communities in Iraq? So they've thought that maybe ISIS, they could actually run on that wave of ISIS and trying to liberate and carve out their little sphere of influence within Iraq, because they felt misrepresented, malrepresented sociopolitically. Now, if the government is now moving back in, who's going to represent these Sunnis? Who's going to speak for these Sunnis? And it's, we have reports already that the government is not doing everything it can in order to ensure that public services are up and running again in Sunni areas. And as soon as ISIS is gone, they will look for an alternative to ISIS, and they will leave a void that the government needs to fill. And the question is, can Abadi and the government do that? And I'm quite skeptical on this, because there are too many players with too many interests. We have the Kurds, we have Iran, we have the Baghdad government, all of them trying to carve out a little sphere of influence for themselves. And I think I'm fearful that the Sunnis might just be left out again, and they might be looking for an alternative then.
Oh, goodness, so much more to come, isn't it? Andreas Krieg, nice to have you with us today from London. Thank you.